have had a terrible day, and they sit round the conference room, and they're all having a chat, and they turn to Iron Man, and Iron Man says, "Yeah, but I still look good in the suit, don't I?"
Fantastic.
I could even do a little. Do you want a little rim shot for that one?
Nice.
There we go. There we go. There we go.
So,
But he still doesn't have Captain America's ass. That's America's ass.
Oh,
who?
He
Iron
doesn't.
Man or Eric?
Either of them.
Oh yeah, I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. Brilliant.
Nice. Oh, look at this. Look at this. I've got a new mug.
I might look like I'm listening, but in my head I'm playing guitar, and I'm thinking about buying another one. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a gift from somebody that I met on LinkedIn, actually.
Oh, that's lovely. That's absolutely lovely, isn't it?
It is very nice indeed. Yes. It's amazing, isn't it, how you can form friendships as well as business relationships with people that you meet in this online world that is the world that we inhabit.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I had a lovely morning. I met with a digital connection. I met this person on a live show that I do, an industry live show. We formed a bit of a relationship. We've exchanged some DMs and things like that. Today we decided to meet for a cup of coffee. And when we met, we picked off like we were. I'm not going to say like we were. We are friends, but it was like two old friends meeting, and we've never actually met. It was wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah, and we just it was like Ken, is it Ken Robinson, the TED talker? Nice segue. When he comes back something like 8 years later and says, "So as I was saying,"
Yeah,
just carried on talking.
Fantastic. But I think it was Brian Fanzo. Tim told me this quote. Brian Fanzo said, "Social media turns the first handshake into a hug." And actually, that's really true, because when I went up to Aberdeen to see some bloke give a TED talk, I seem to remember it was, I met loads of people there that I had met in this virtual world, and I hugged them all because I felt like I really knew them.
Yeah,
lovely.
Yeah, that's a nice comment there. It's nice to pay tribute that Dave Kay put in there. Wilco Johnson, famous member of Dr. Feelgood, and then went on to do his own work as well. Sadly passed. So there's lovely tributes on social media to him today, and his guitar playing style and all of that, which he kind of invented a particular style. And yeah, nice one.
Yeah, I've invented a particular style as well. It's just not one that's normally fondly remembered.
Not one that's fondly remembered at all. At all.
So, welcome to the digital download, and welcome to everybody in the audience. Good afternoon, Dave. Good afternoon, John. Good afternoon, Ross. Good afternoon, everybody else that is watching. And today, I think we're going to be a little bit more relaxed about things, aren't we? Because it's just us. We haven't got a guest today. But we are, well, maybe that makes it more highbrow rather than less highbrow.
Yeah.
No, probably not, actually. So today, we're talking about storytelling. And I think that for all of us, I don't just mean all of us on the call, I mean all of us in the virtual world, the idea of being able to tell stories is increasingly important. The trying to create content that engages our audiences is really important. And I think that one of the things that we often forget maybe is that the people that we are connected to and the people that are consuming our content are not in the same place as us. So, we are all in our own little sphere, and it means that we don't need to tell stories amongst ourselves particularly. We can just reel out facts and we'll go, oh, that's really interesting. But the world, the internet, is awash with facts.
Yep.
It was Eric Schmidt that said, Eric Schmidt, ex-CEO of Google and now of Alphabet Group, said there's more data now created in any 48-hour window than there was from the beginning of recorded history through to 2003. And it's probably through to 2010 or something now. Mm-hmm. And the point is that we've got loads of data, we've got loads of information, we've got loads of stuff. What we need is, as Gary Vee said, content is king, but context is God. So how are we going to present this in such a way that people consume it, people believe it, people like it, people invest time in consuming that content? Because surely one of the things that storytelling does is it enables you to engage your audience for a longer period of time than simply writing a series of facts. Now, I think it's worth saying that storytelling is a very human trait, isn't it? You know, from the beginning of civilization, people were around campfires telling stories. That's how stuff was passed from one generation to the next. Music is largely based, or certainly used to be largely based until Oasis came along, largely based on telling stories and communicating things. And certainly folk music was about educating and spreading the word amongst people that were largely illiterate. So, you know, you learn a folk song, it can be passed down from generation to generation to generation.
Or in the case of the Beatles, you just tell a story that you've heard someone else tell and do it in a kind of slightly different way.
Very true, but better and more innovative. But that's a story for another show, isn't it?
Another show.
I think this is an interesting point, though, for the show, because I think sometimes people assume that storytelling has to be brand new. And really, at the end of the day, there's a handful of stories. It's just the unique interpretations of the story, right? Like a story has a hero, the protagonist, right? The protagonist usually goes through some kind of journey. And then at the end, the protagonist wins the journey. It's like pretty like storytelling in its essence, like in its pieces, is actually pretty basic. It's just how do we use the mechanism?
And when you finished your little explanation of that, I felt compelled to stand on a rock and start singing "The Circle of Life."
Yeah, very good. It is interesting, isn't it, that I don't know about you, but since we decided we were going to cover this topic and just have a chat about this topic this week, I've been particularly focused on finding stories on the different social networks.
Yeah.
So, normally, I guess that, and perhaps I'm not normal from this perspective, but I normally consume content from people that I consume content from, people that I like, people that I know, people that I've met. I read this content and I'm prepared to extend them a greater level of courtesy and attention than I might somebody that I don't know. So, one of you guys publishes something, I read it, and I read it because it's you rather than because it's necessarily telling a good story. So I've been much more pragmatic about trying to identify whether or not the stories or the things that I'm seeing on social posts have been good stories. And it's amazed me how few people know how to tell a story. Correct. Absolutely amazed me. So often it is all no, but so often it's just bland statements of fact without any supporting evidence. So you need to do this because this is the quickest way to achieve this.
Yeah.
And why, how, prove it.
Why, what? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And there is very rarely any of that. And the other thing that struck me is that, and a friend of ours did a post earlier today, actually, and they highlighted Brompton bicycles, and the headline was Brompton make bikes that fold in under 20 seconds. That's the facts. The story is Brompton create urban freedom for happier lives. Facts tell, stories sell. And facts tell, stories sell is true, but that isn't telling a story. It's a nice strapline, but how many people tell stories in their posts? Well, and I think maybe a good starting point here is we have two exceptionally talented storytellers on this very
board. Thank you.
Robin, let's hear
it. But the whole TED process is one of teaching you how to tell stories, from what I understand. So go on. Oh, look, there we are. There's a prime example. There's somebody that I hugged first time I met her.
Absolutely.
Having interacted with her
brilliant.
On social. I met Beth. I gave her a hug. I felt like I was old friends with her.
And we too had a hug. I too had a hug with Beth, but she had to get a stepladder and I had to bend down.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of a disparity in height.
A little bit of a disparity in height.
Because she's 8'3" and you're only 4'2", aren't you? Despite what people might believe. How you tell a story matters as much as the story itself, if not more. Any thoughts?
Agreed. 100%. 100%.
So you two TEDsters, give us a little bit of background on what you have learned about storytelling, or what aha moments you had during the process of learning to deliver a TED talk.
First off, is TEDsters a thing? Because I want to put it on my LinkedIn profile.
TEDster. I'm a TEDster, yeah. Do it. Tracy, I think you should definitely grab this one.
Sorry, I was stuck on TEDster. What's the question?
So what aha moments did you have as you were going through the process of learning to be a TEDster? What aha moments when you thought, yeah, of course, I never thought about that. That people can kind of take away as things that they can start to fold into their behaviors.
So it was really interesting for me because by nature, I am like an ad hoc speaker. I've been a Toastmaster for years, but I've never written a speech. I had never written a speech before I did my TED Talk. And because they make you write it out, right? So I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna actually have to do that. And I legitimately never had done that before. Started public speaking in university, right? So the whole time I had never done that. And it was really interesting from that perspective of bang intro, right? You're trying to capture people's attention right away. You're trying to create a story that makes sense, because let's be honest, I talk on a lot of tangents as well. So sometimes it's hard for people to follow. So I had to tell a story that made sense and then leave it with a bam at the end, right? What are people taking away? And it was a lot more structured for me than I've normally done. And it was a lot more structured than I'm normally comfortable with. But what it taught me was that there is this, I don't know, when I think of storytelling, I always think of Star Wars. I don't know, I'm a nerd, what are you gonna do? But the journey of Luke Skywalker is the hero's journey. I know we have this in common, Eric. Maybe this is what makes you a good TEDster. Sure,
TEDster.
But so for me, that's what I was like, okay, well, I have 14 minutes max to tell this whole story that took Star Wars 3 episodes at least to tell, right? So that was the one thing, was the structure, and how it is important to have a good structure in your story, because you want to leave people with something, but more importantly, you want to take the reader or the listener and put them in the shoes of the hero of the story. And that's the activity, right? So when you're developing this talk and you have only 14 minutes to make an impact, how are you going to take the audience and put them into the shoes of the hero? And the activity is the same with a social media post, right? It's a much shorter piece of content, of course, but how can you take somebody and put them in the shoes of the hero? So when they leave, they feel like the hero of the story, not that you're the hero of the story. So that was one thing that was really useful for me. And the other thing, those of you who know me, you know that I talk pretty fast in general. I have lots of ideas. I try to get them out of my mouth. Pacing is a thing that TED is very strict on. They're about teaching you how to pace so that you don't. I had a client once actually tell me that the Tracy train was rushing by him and he couldn't get on. And I'm like, well, story's no good if it just blows by you like a bullet train, and you can't put yourself in the shoes of the hero. And so that pacing was something that I'm still not super good at, but it's a very important piece of specifically verbal storytelling, so that people can be with you as you tell the story instead of feeling like they're trying to catch you. Nobody likes to feel like someone is ahead of them and they're trying to catch up. People like to feel like you're going somewhere together. And that is something that really good pacing can do. So those are probably the 2 biggest takeaways for me.
So the first of those takeaways about creating a story in which the reader is the hero and they can empathize with the hero, and then they can be the star of the story. So how do you do that in your typical social media post? So you've got 250 words to write some stuff, and your boss is getting on your back about the fact that you haven't had enough views or you haven't sold enough stuff. So, it so often, too often, invariably, it defaults into some sort of either overt or covert sales pitch. It becomes a once upon a time, this was the case until this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. So buy our stuff, and that's basically what the post turns out like for most people. So how do you not fall into that trap? What advice would you give?
The number one question I think is useful to ask in this scenario is, why are we writing a post? Are we writing a post to write a post? Or are we writing a post to tell a story? Because in essence, storytelling isn't just, sure, I remember when I was in corporate and we had to have a social media post every day, and half the time people were just like taking someone else's content or someone else's quote and using that to fill the gap, right? Yep. And you're like, our intention isn't to tell a story. But in my experience, it's also very rare that people have clarity on the story they want to tell, especially from a corporate perspective, right? So we have a product, we sell a product, right? And that becomes the story we tell, because from a marketing perspective, we're bombarded with all of this information about getting views and advertising and all of these things. And we've never even tried to tell a story, right? What is the story that our product tells? Why does our product exist in the market? These types of why questions, most people aren't exploring on a day-to-day basis in the corporate work environment. I worked in marketing. I can vouch for this, right? It's our job to market the product. Never did we talk about storytelling. We went to one story brand workshop and then used the story brand script on the homepage, and that was it, right? We checked the box, we're doing storytelling. But we're not doing storytelling because the people who were responsible for the content didn't know the story. And so I don't have a super good answer, because really what you need to do is you need to go and learn the story. And you also need to go and understand, what is your voice in the story? So as a marketing coordinator, or as a marketing manager, or as a salesperson, what is your role in the story of the business? Because once you know your story, then you can tell your story. But until you know your story, you are just going to say facts because that's what you know.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really good advice. But as a pragmatist, how does somebody make that happen?
By understanding the science.
Right.
By understanding the science. This whole stuff about storytelling in business, to some, sounds a little bit fluffy. Until you realize what we're actually talking about is fundamental, crucial science. And it's rooted, all you have to do is watch Start With Why with Simon Sinek to get a little taster of this, but then pull it through even further. We are wired as humans pretty much the same way. Our newest brains, our neocortex, right at the front, operates at the what level. That's what functions and processes rational and analytical thought and language, right? It can consume vast amounts of data and take on vast amounts of information. The limbic brains in the middle of our brain area is responsible for all of the feelings around, for feelings like trust and loyalty, and they tune into why. The limbic brains are also responsible for all human behavior, all decision making, and has absolutely no capacity for language. When we communicate with the what, people can understand vast amounts of information, facts and data, features, benefits, and all of that. It just doesn't drive behavior because it scientifically can't. When we communicate from the why, which is the storytelling part, and then move into the how and the what, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior. And then if we supplement that with a couple of little neocortex stimulators, we allow people to rationalize the tangible things that we're saying and doing. So therefore they leave that room or they leave that post walking away with a behavioral change mindset and also some information. And they're able to change their behavior.
Okay, I get that, but I struggle with the difference between the abstract concept and the concrete implementation. So I understood every word you said in that, but that doesn't help me. I understood exactly what you said, but I don't understand how I take that and do something with that.
Let's go back to Simon Sinek once again. He famously opened one of the best well-known TED Talks by talking about why into how into what, and start with why. Back in the day when he was doing his thing, Apple were changing the world of computers, and most of the companies that sold computers at the time, he gives the great example. They say they were all saying, we make great computers, they're well designed, they're simple to use and friendly, do you want to buy one? That's how everyone in that sector communicated. We say what we have and what we do. We tell you why that's better than what you currently have, and we expect you to change behavior, but you can't. So everyone's talking about the fact that we're globally focused, innovative, technology-centered, client-focused. We're generous listeners. We are best in class. We're this, we're that, we're blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Apple were changing the game. They were selling computers pretty much like Gateway and everybody else at the time, just with access to exactly the same stock resources and stuff and talent pools. But their message to the world was different. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in doing things differently. The way that we do that is by making our products beautiful, simple to use and friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Do you want to buy one? Selling exactly the same thing. Company A, Gateway, we make great computers. They're well designed, simple to use. You should have one. Apple created an experience. Apple were trying to affect the limbic part of the brain by making you want to be part of that community and making you want to be part of the gang rather than just a customer.
So, right. So I understand that. And I understand that with Apple, because Apple are clearly a very different company to other companies. When you pick up one of their products, it's beautifully made. It's milled from a solid lump of metal as opposed to something which is two bits of plastic that are clipped together. It's a very different product, and all of those words resonate with me. But I run an accountancy practice.
Yeah.
And my accountancy practice is doing, and the number of times that I have been approached on social media by accountants who say, we're an accountancy practice. We do basically all of those things that you don't want to do. So, bookkeeping and tax returns and yada, 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 and all of these things. So do you want to have a talk? Well, no, because you do exactly the things that I'm already getting from somebody that I've known for 10 years. So why would I want to talk to you about them when you've just told me they're exactly the same things as them? So how do I, as an accountant, start to make use of that Simon Sinek start with why?
You do what QuickBooks are doing all over the media right now. They've created something really fun and interesting, telling stories which reach out to the limbic parts of the brain of their customers by talking around the subject and around their knowledge of the pinch points and pain and all of that. And right at the end, there's a little bit, and that's what we're here for. But it's never, do you want to buy accountancy services? It's building a little community of fun and interest and a bit of entertainment around about the subject by talking about their knowledge of the kind of things that go on in the world around about what it is that they do. And then they offer a little glimpse into how life could be better, how your position and how your daily bread could be better by offering a completely different approach. They're still selling accountancy services.
Adam, it's as simple as the difference between you and me. When you give people facts and figures about what happens in the world, what happens to you, they listen, but they're not particularly interested. When you tell people a story, they naturally put themselves in the center of that story. They can envision this happening to them. We're all a bit egotistical like that. We are the star of our own personal journey. So telling them that story and allowing them to put themselves in it. So my question then would be, what are the stories your ideal customer profiles already telling themselves?
Yeah.
And how do you align your solution with that?
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. So let's assume, if you will, that there's a marketing manager somewhere, or of the 875 million people on LinkedIn, there's a marketing manager somewhere, and they've tuned in to an absolutely devastatingly interesting live stream on a Friday.
Wow.
And
Where?
What's the link?
Let's imagine that they're like Tracy. So they've tuned into this because they're eager to kind of learn and discover things and have their thinking challenged. And they've said, right, that's it. That's where we're going wrong. That's why all of our campaigns are falling, on deaf ears. And every time we email out, we get loads of unsubscribes. And every time we have a go at cold calling people, they're not listening to us. And they're going through all of these processes that so many businesses are. But Tracy is sold on this idea. So she has to take it back to her business and get them to be equally passionate about it. So what does she do? What does she do to convince other people in the business to get on this train?
Can I speak from my own perspective? Because I've actually done that. So this is what I did. Whether or not this is the right way, is a different thing. But I went to a StoryBrand workshop, and I was like, oh, this is so awesome, because the whole point is about like creating a story for people to go in. And I went back to the company and I did two things. One, I started writing my blog posts, because I had the freedom to write blog posts from a storytelling perspective instead, and looked at the engagement from a storytelling blog versus a heavily facts-laden blog. Very much higher engagement on the storytelling blogs, I will tell you right now. Secondly, I rewrote the homepage of the website. I didn't publish it, but I rewrote it, and I wrote it from a storytelling perspective. Like, this is my interpretation of what the company does through a story. And then we had meetings about it and everything. So it ended up being like everybody's version, which I think is a like watered down version once everybody's opinions are included. But it ended up kicking off an entire website redesign because they were like, oh, the company I worked for at the time is a tech company. Tech companies have the tendency to speak tech because that's what they know. And they like to say, like, these are all the things that we do, and this is why this tech is better than this tech. And then they're like, we have all this content. Now we'll just like SEO optimize, right? And you're like, we have like 42 pages of content. There were 42 pages on the website at that point. We redid the website, so there were 8 pages, not including like the case studies and stuff like that, but 8 primary pages on the website that were just based on telling the story of what the company does. So will that work out in every scenario for every middle line manager? Absolutely not, because depending on how open your organization is to innovation and trying new things, if you're in like a big global organization, maybe start with the blog post piece of it. But there are ways to just like start doing it, right? If you're creating content today, like if you're already writing social media posts, write a storytelling one. I actually, a friend of mine who does another show with me on Wednesday is Passion Break. If
there is another show, is there?
What? Is that the
I
one
do. I'm on all the shows, just in case anybody's wondering. I have 3 weekly shows. Anyway, so my co-conspirator for Passion Break, Kira Day, she's currently in Costa Rica. Very rarely does she post on social media, besides the fact that we do Passion Break on Wednesdays. But yesterday was U.S. Thanksgiving, although the both of us are Canadian. But we did a topic this week about gratitude and passion. And so yesterday she posted this post of her next to this like giant tree in Costa Rica, making her look very tiny, although she is legitimately very tiny, about the conversation we had at Passion Break and what it made her start to think, right? So it's all just her perspective, right? It's just people who, like, this is just my experience of the conversation we had. And people forget that storytelling can just be your story, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something complex. It doesn't have to be something you create, right? Like, it's not like we show up here and we're writing fiction, right? you can just tell a story about how you experienced. I tell a story all the time about how I experienced my son, right? Like, oh, this really mundane thing happened today, but this is my story of it. And other people are having that experience. So those types of things, just like Rob said, what they're already experiencing, what they're already thinking, people can get in the story. It's very easy access.
So this was a really, sorry, I was going to say, this is a really interesting comment on that. So Ross's comment, how crucial is tone of voice in the storytelling process?
Absolutely crucial.
It's the difference between drawing your audience in and pushing them away.
And it's the same for standing on a stage or writing a post. It's that tone of voice is absolutely crucial. I think one of the key sort of thunk moments that I had during, so we had a 14 week training process and prep process to get ready for TEDx Aberdeen a couple of weeks ago.
And you only got 11 minutes, didn't you? So Tracy keeps going about 14 minutes. You must feel really shortchanged.
Well, it's the currency exchange.
Well, we had 12 minutes. Yeah. I went a bit over, famously a little bit over, and they're going to have to do a bit of editing. But one of the thunk moments that I had. So we worked with the brilliant guys at AB15, Bob Keeler and Derek Thompson, who took us through their business storytelling program, which was fascinating and has changed a hell of a lot about me and will change more to come. One of the things that came clear to me during this process was that I'd never really, I guess sort of tacitly I'd kind of given it some thought, but I'd never actually sat down and really absorbed this. There's a big difference between presenting and really connecting with people. So this has changed. So going through that process with Bob and Derek has really made me think about, and actually it works digitally, it works in content, and it works on a stage. Are you presenting? Now, at some points in our lives, we've all had to stand up and present. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I've got a few slides. It's a health and safety thing. We're changing the colour of the fire extinguishers. They're going from green to red. No longer use the green ones. Use the red ones. Just transferring information, just presenting. John or Joanne's going to give you out some forms to sign. They need to be in by Tuesday. Thanks very much. Any questions, give me a call. 5 slides, presented, done. You're not really looking to make a super deep connection. You're just trying to exchange information and get that out there. So going from that mindset to, that's fine, do I need to present or do I need to connect, is a fundamental building block for change. If you need to connect with people, if you need to get inside people's heads to the point where you're going to change behaviors, you need to think about connecting. And that's where much deeper thought and skill comes into this. You need to think about meeting people where they are and bringing them along on a journey. To truly connect with people, you need to understand, first off, it's exactly what Tracy said earlier on. What am I trying to achieve? Who am I trying to connect to? What do I want to connect with them on? What level do I want to connect with them on? What do I want them to experience in this? And writing this all down. So this is all the part of the journey and the training that we got was, what do you want people to experience on this? One of the beautiful things that the guys at AB15 showed us, I'd never heard of it before, was Plutchik's emotional wheel. Super, super helpful. Plutchik's emotional wheel. Often on this wheel, I should have brought it along, but I haven't. I don't have it. We can maybe put a little copy of it in the link. Plutchik's emotional wheel shows us that we generally stay when we're presenting or we are traditionally presenting or writing content, we stay in sort of danger zones of emotion. But actually, if you use linkages on this emotional wheel, you can actually craft out where your post, your pitch, your presentation, whatever you're calling it, or your connection that you're trying to make is actually taking people on this journey. The more spots you can hit, the more effective you're being in getting people to rise up with you, to come down with you, to start supporting you, to start feeling sad for you, happy for you, all these things really affecting those parts of the limbic brain, really affecting and getting all the behavioral change modes firing in there. So I had a couple of Bob used to keep saying to us, don't tell us, show us. Don't tell us, show us. Now, even that's pulling through to content. For me, that's become really helpful. Okay, I get what you're saying. Don't tell us, show us. Maybe I can show a small video at this point. Perfect. Or I can show a picture. That's great. We can't always do that with our content, but we can do it with text. We can actually show people a little bit more. rather than just telling and just saying, this is great, you should buy it. You can actually show it and demonstrate it through text, through an example, something that they're going to be able to relate to. Oh, look at that. Plutchik's wheel. Have a little look at that and watch that little slide on that. That is a fascinating little aid to where am I? Am I in the danger zones of boredom? Am I going to have people during this talk? Am I going to have people's heads nodding down and thinking, actually, I'll just check in on LinkedIn and see if anybody's... how do you keep bobbing their heads up? By taking them through these lovely little nodal points on this emotional wheel. And which ones do I want to go for? If I'm looking for ecstasy at one point, if I want them all to be... I want to play around serenity, move into joy, and then pull them into ecstasy. If I want to move into a bit of terror, I want to play about with apprehension and fear, and then hit them with a sucker punch of terror, and then pull them back out. Start to get them into surprise and distraction and all these, and you can weave all of these elements into your pitch, your post, your onstage presentation. One of the a couple of days after TED, Bob wrote a great post, and he spoke about the training program. We had 8 group sessions, 5 online drop-in clinics, 3 one-to-one coaching sessions, multiple videos and e-learning modules. We all put in for a 12-minute talk. We all put in over 40 hours of work. I personally put in about 60 hours of work for a 12-minute talk. That sounds like a lot of effort, but it got results. That simple maxim applies to everything that we're doing in what we call public speaking, which I think is a horrible term, or presentations. But he said so often we see, and we see this in content as well as people standing on stages. So often we see people finding something that kind of works for them a little bit because they feel comfortable for it, but it's ineffective. He calls it, number 1, the fling and wing approach. Chuck a few slides together and wing it. Disastrous. Absolutely disastrous. This is from his post, reading text slides, promising, well, I won't go through all of these, and then going through them all. And then going through them all. And you can see everybody reaching for the...
It always makes me laugh when somebody says, you probably can't read this at the back. So what the hell have you put it on the screen for if you know the people sitting in it can't read it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what's funny is, as I'm listening to you talk, Eric, it's amazing, and I'm thinking, so what is the commercial value of storytelling? What are the facts?
Yeah, wait a minute, Alex. Eric is telling a story, and you're putting yourself in the center of it.
Yeah, brilliant. The next thing he said was standing at a podium, stiffly reading a script with polished corporate slides on the big screen behind you, and everyone thinking, well, this could be a robot doing this, or anybody. There's nothing about this person that's adding any value to this. And the last one, which we see all the time, talking about themselves, their own organization's achievements and awards, instead of letting the audience know how you can properly help them and add value to their lives.
So let me just run through a little bit about us.
That's enough about us. What do you think about us?
And then that's enough about us. What do you think about us? And the last one, which is a bit of a revelation for me. Throughout my life, I've thought I'm pretty confident on the stage, and I kind of cringed when I heard him talk about this. And when he put it in his post, because everything's changed for me now on this. Over 50 hours of work, I reckon, for a 12-minute presentation that we all put into that. I've been guilty of thinking, I like being on stage. I'm a bit cocky. I'm not going to bother rehearsing because I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to wing it. I know what I'm talking about. So there's no structure there. There's no flow that Tracy talked about. There's no context. There's no turning point. There's no resolution. There's no call to action. There's just a big, bold, brassy person standing on the stage, just going off on tangents, and everyone going, "What is going on here?" I'm intrigued, and it's quite entertaining, but I'm taking nothing from this. And we see this in content. We see it in presentations. The fling and wing approach I've seen many times in my life, chucking a few slides together and just going to wing it. One of the funniest, and it's there you go. It stuck with me today. Was a very, very droll and dry Scottish projects director standing up to talk about a huge project in Brazil. And he was the project director of this, a multi-billion-dollar project. And he was presenting it at a kickoff meeting. And Neil stood up and he spoke very much like that throughout the entire thing. This is a picture of the project. This is a picture of the vessel. This is us at a client office. This is the office that we set up. So we went over there, and this has stuck with me for life. I find it incredibly funny. It was the first time I'd seen someone do something with this confidence at a presentation. Was he a great presenter? No, but he did something great during it. He said, so we got over there, we set up the office, we hired some staff, and I'm just going to show you what happened. And the next slide, he's flicked to a blank slide, and he just stared at the audience for a good 20 seconds.
Which is a lifetime, isn't it, in that situation?
A lifetime. And he went, that's right. Everybody's thinking, is the slide broken? Has he lost his place? And he went, that's right. What happened was absolutely nothing. Nothing happened for 6 months. And I thought, there you go. There's a guy who's just been asked to give a presentation, but he's done something. I mean, that was probably 15 years ago, and I still remember that today. I still remember that little point. So the not rehearsing part, I'm just going to give it a go. I know what I'm talking about. There's loads to learn there. For me, just to close off on your initial question, what learning? This is going to sound really fluffy and nonsense, but one of the things that I had throughout this entire process was I had a kind of clunk moment in a few of our classroom sessions. I don't know if this is going to translate to Boston and to Calgary, but you know what the Great British Bake Off is? You know what that is? Have you seen it? Sometimes a few of the bakers end up with a soggy bottom. It's got a soggy bottom, or it's overbaked. A few of my homework sessions where I went in to present my homework, a few of them got a soggy bottom, got a dry hand clap. But one of the revelations that I had, which has changed everything about me, was stop trying to do this in a way that's trying to have pizzazz or have flair that you think other people want to see you do. Just feel it. Just feel this. Just take a deep breath. Have a think about what you're trying to get across. How can I put this across in an authentic way? So at that point, I decided, and I told our curators, Derek, on a one-to-one call, I've had a revelation. I don't want to be a TED talker. I'm getting swept away, and I'm becoming someone else in this process. I'm watching TED Talks, and I'm thinking, oh, that's a good thing to do. I'll do that. When actually, I just want to walk out there, take a deep breath, and go, this is it.
So as I was saying,
I want you, if you meet me in the street or you see me on a live, like the digital download, to see the same person on that stage. And actually, if I do that, if I'm very genuine and very authentic, then I've got nothing to lose, and I don't have to fake it. I'm not trying to be someone else. I'm not trying to be Mr. Educator or Mr. Call to Action. I'm just going to share something with you the way I would speak to you in a bar, a cafe, or on a live like this, or in my content. And I want all that to link together beautifully, because I'm going to wear clothes that I feel comfortable in, that you'll see me in walking around in town. I'm not going to go and buy a new outfit to look like Mr. Corporate Speaker. I just want to be me. And actually then everything became a lot easier, because then I could feel it. And then I could start to engage people in a process. So that was a major learning point, was just, I think a lot of people I met someone, the lady that I met this morning that I've known for said, the idea of doing what you did and walking onto that red dot makes me want to be physically ill. I couldn't do it. And I said, I completely disagree. You can. It's not that you could, you can. You absolutely can. You've built up this whole idea of public speaking as being sort of things that other people do. Things that other people do. It's them. It's those TED talkers. That's what they do. When actually, you've built up so many fear walls around this, and you've created them all yourself. What if people don't like what I say? What if people don't like the way that I stand? What if I fluff my lines? What if I blah, blah, blah? Because you're trying to be, you've seen great talks. You've seen Steve Jobs. You've seen, I don't know if Elon Musk's great, but you've seen the big kickoff meetings. You've seen TED Talks, and you say, oh, those people are really good. Those people have had training and they've had help. And I fundamentally believe that there's a Teddy type talk in everyone, with a bit of support and a bit of guidance to help them through that journey.
So what you're saying is brilliant, but it's easier said than done. How do you break down those walls that you've built up probably over many years in some cases?
I think one of the foundation blocks of how breaking down those walls that you've built up is just exactly what we talk about with our clients. It's getting a process in place and actually understanding the biology, understanding the mechanics, the devices that you can use that are going to make you more comfortable as a speaker and are going to make more people more comfortable with you as a speaker. So information is power, right? So if you understand how all this works and you understand at this point, if I do this, then there's a sort of biological, psychological tenet there. If I use little devices, I can't remember is it triordials or triples? If I use little triples, if I stand here and say, first of all, we could go over there, or we could go over there, but then we could centralize and do it right here. There's a big difference in doing what is happening here. There's a big difference.
Jupiter.
There's a big difference.
Yes, you're right. It is Jupiter. Now we also have Mercury.
There's a big difference between doing that and saying we could go over here, or we could go over here, but we could centralize and do it right here. Tone of voice, hand movements, being comfortable, knowing that I learned loads about body language and stagecraft. And when you know these points, they make you more comfortable as a speaker because you're not going out there to wing it. You're not going out there to just give it a go and see what happens. You're going out, and this is a horrible thing to say. You're going out there with someone who's now got a bit of expertise in how this works. So you feel far more comfortable and you've smashed through most of those walls because you're not going out there to wing it to see what happens. You're going out there, little things, body language. I learned about the influence zone. The influence zone. Someone standing with their hands by their side doing their thing or with their hands crossed down around the groin area is far less perceived as an influencer or someone who has influence or authority than someone who comes out, opens up their shoulders a little bit and holds their hands just above the belly button. Psychologically, that person is more in charge. And if you keep your hands above the belly button while you're doing it and keep your shoulders back and then emphasize certain words with a little hand movement out to the left, a little hand movement out to the right. If you're using these little triples, more, better, faster, and emphasizing them with hand points. Again, that's the word. A tricolon. He has been listening along the way.
It's good he didn't say anything bad then, isn't it?
It's his fault. Yes, he caused all of this. So in answer to that, how do you get someone to the point where they are not terrified about all those walls? Great question, Alex. And I think a huge part of it is to understand the process, understand the devices that you can use, and have a framework that you can use to apply to anything, your content, a stage talk, or a pitch, or whatever it might be. Thank you, Derek. The gaffer is in the room.
Can I add one other thing there too? Because a lot of times it's hard to just make the switch. So like Adam was talking about at the beginning, if I'm going to go from posting corporate brochureware today to storytelling tomorrow, what are the things that I can do? And I don't think any of us have done that. Right. So instead of assuming that we can do that, it's about taking little steps. Right. I remember I've done a lot of Dale Carnegie training. Right. And they make you do homework. Right. The TED experience makes you do homework. Yep. And unless most of us aren't just going to sit around by ourselves and do homework that nobody assigned for us. No. Right. No. And so if having those, and you can create them for yourself, but really having those external forces that are like, okay, now try this. This is why people do 30-day video challenges and things like that as well, right? Because it's someone else holding you accountable to trying a thing. Yeah. And I had a similar experience in Dale Carnegie, right? You have to come and you have to do a talk every time, and you have to do them based on emotional events, and you have to do them based on things you're teaching, and it teaches you different parts of the equation. Toastmasters does the same thing, right? And if you don't have that, I think it makes it easier to have a little bit of that external
100%. 100%. A lot of people, I've now realized that all the way through my professional life, I've been kind of winging it based on personality. Personality will get me through. When in actual fact, what I now realize is that there are devices and processes that I can use that will add credibility, competence, and a comfort level. So I started thinking, what do I want to do? And Derek on our one-to-ones was like, what emotions do you want to get out of this, and where do you want to start? And I said, what I want to start is, when I come out onto the red dot, I want people to feel comfortable, that this guy's comfortable. If I'm comfortable and I look comfortable and I've got a smile and I take a deep breath and just a look around, I want them to feel we're in good hands here. I want to start with a bit of self-deprecation, because I think that always works well, and yet again, I find myself out of my depth, so this guy's not just going to ramble on about how brilliant he is. He's actually talking that he's got failures. And then I'm going to build from there. I want to take them through a journey of tragedy and loss. I want to take them through adventure. I want them to smell the region and taste the region and feel it with me. I want them to feel the heat. I want them to feel the pain of what I went through, and then the abject failure, and then the build back to the success and what success meant. I want to take them through that emotional journey. We can do this in our content online. We can do this
on that point. So your content has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yep.
So how can somebody break their content down so that it doesn't just become a blur, a little bit of a stream of consciousness? I bumped into Eric today, and you never guess what? He was wearing a red shirt, and he was wearing a red shirt last time I saw him. And actually, it was wearing his boots last time I saw him, because he was wearing red boots as well. And he was on a red dot, so everything was a bit red. The end. It's like, okay, that's lovely, in as much as it puts somebody else in my shoes for having that interaction or that experience, but it hasn't added value. It hasn't taken people on a journey. It hasn't told them a story. It hasn't got a beginning, a middle, and an end. So what are some of the techniques they can use to start to package up some of their thinking in a way that is going to encourage the reader or the watcher, if they do a video, to go through that journey with them?
Start with intentionality.
Yeah,
what do you want to say, and what do you want them to hear? Go ahead, Trish.
I always go by this formula, and I don't know where I heard it. It's not my own formula, but like, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
Journalism 101.
And it doesn't and here's the thing about social media too, in particular, right? Like, people do scroll, right? People either are engaged by the first sentence or an image that you use, or they're not, and they're going to scroll past it, right? So if you make your point too far down in a post, most people won't get there, right? So I think that tell them what you're going to tell them. And you don't have to, you can't tell them all things in one sentence, right? That's not how a story works. But like, what do they need to know to convince them they need to listen to the rest of the story? And then tell them the story. And then tell them what you want them to take away, or what you want them to do, right? Like, I love a good what if, right? So like, do like what if Wednesdays a lot of times. And like, at the end, it's like, what if this? That's what I want you to do. I want you to think about what if, right?
Yeah.
And so that ties back to Rob's intention piece. Like, and I kind of think it ties back to the whole why concept too, right? Like, why are you writing this post? Why are you writing this post about why Eric is wearing a red shirt and that was on a red dot and everything's so red?
So I think that this is a really important thing that Kevin said. And, we often say to people when we're working with them that they need to have confidence. They need to lead with themselves. It's the most attractive thing they've got. And one of the things that I've noticed, and you may have noticed this, or maybe it's not true, but I have noticed that some of the people that seem to be being pushed as content creators stroke influencers are becoming increasingly formulaic with their content.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, the content is getting progressively less engagement from the audience than it used to get.
Yep.
And I think that part of that is that they are being forced into this formulaic thing. And, one of the, so you highlighted Sir Ken Robinson, you highlighted Simon Sinek, you highlighted Eric, you highlighted Steve Jobs. the thing that is special about all three of those is that they didn't go into that box. What they did was they had a very different way of doing it. So Steve Jobs and and one more thing, for the big reveal, or when he was addressing Stanford at the commencement speech, where he literally wrote it the night before, because the guy that was going to write it for him kept saying, I'll write it for you. And then he said, no, you need to write it yourself. You're the one they want to hear, not me. And he did that the night before. And Simon Sinek, with his flip chart, where he's getting so animated, and he's drawing these lines on it, and he's going, an arrow here and there. And it's the themness. You got to see the most authentic snippet of who they were, didn't you, in those talks?
Yeah, they dropped the guard, they dropped the corporate nonsense, they dropped the feeling that I need to give a great talk here. They just went out there. I have to preface this by saying that their version of themselves was worth listening to, and I mean that with love and tenderness. That just telling people to be themselves isn't always the answer.
No.
It just so happened that lots of people who've done great work in public, who went out there and were themselves, their version of themselves was actually worth listening to. That's not going to work for everyone.
I'm not sure that I agree with that.
I mean, being yourself is fantastic the whole time, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody just being themselves can just jump on a stage and just give a brilliant talk.
No, it isn't. And what it doesn't mean is that everybody will love you, because not everybody loves you in real life. And if you're authentic in your posts and your talks, not everybody's going to love you there as well. But actually, therein lies the beauty of this.
Yeah.
If you say to somebody, I'm really good at these things, but I'm really crap at these things. So if these are what you want, I ain't your man. Now that's lovely, because actually, what future is there for you to have any sort of relationship, either business or romantic or friendship, with somebody who values the things that you are not good at? Whereas if you can find somebody that says, yeah, those things that you're rubbish at, I don't care. They don't matter to me. These are what matter to me. That's perfect for a business relationship. It's perfect for a partnership, because you want somebody that says, well, those things that you're good at, I hate those. These bits that you hate, I love. Great. That. Well, there's no argument about who's going to do what in this relationship. And those people are out there. The clients are out there that say, I'm buying you for this little niche here. Mm-hmm. And that kind of forthrightness of being the most authentic who you are, the good and the bad, the little peculiarities that we all have, leading with those draws to you people that value the things that you're good at and you like.
I think this is true. And one of the things that I also, storytelling doesn't have to be standing on a TED stage, right?
Exactly.
Not everyone is going to stand on a TED stage. Not everybody wants to stand on a TED stage. It was actually really interesting for me, because one of the things that I have learned in my journey through public speaking is that I don't like being at the front of the stage like I'm the one everyone should listen to. I like being in a conversation, right? So that's my preference. That's not everybody's preference, but everybody has a different preference. So using the power of storytelling isn't about trying to get someone to do something on social media or about being on a TED stage. There's a power in telling a story that gives people access to your experience, which is the door that allows them to step into that experience. So whether it's you meeting someone at a coffee shop and having a random conversation, or it's a social media post, or it's a TED talk, or it's in a client presentation because your client really needs to understand this, right? The power of storytelling is the same power. It's the same power I have in convincing my son to eat vegetables, right? There's no end to the value that storytelling has. And so all of us, everybody in the chat today, all of us on this call, everybody who's listening to this on a replay has a different way they are going to storytell. All of the pieces that we were talking about, the strategies, the formulas, those things, yes, they exist. And there's a way for you to do that in your way. And when you can find your way, that's when storytelling will become powerful for you. And that is an exploration, right? If you're not using storytelling today, there's some things you can try. And I just encourage everyone to try them.
I think that's the mic drop moment.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. As Kevin said, it's not all about TED Talks. It's not all about posting. It's meeting someone in a coffee shop. It's about pitching an idea to an investor or a new client. It's about everything. It's about how we are communicating ourselves out in our business and our domestic lives.
And next week, it'd be great to hear Tracy's story about how she can actually get her son to eat his vegetables.
Yeah, because your kids are like in their like pushing their 30s, and you still can do that.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. It's specific vegetables, but the kid does eat vegetables, so I'll take it as a win.
Very good. That was a lovely hour.
It was. So thank you to everybody for your questions. What fantastic interaction from the audience this week. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, it was lovely. Yeah, and fantastic.
Thank you from everybody on the panel. We haven't introduced ourselves. We don't need to introduce ourselves. Everyone knows who we are because we're here every bleeding week, aren't we? So
we're famous. We're LinkedIn famous.
We are. So everybody, thank you all very much indeed.